When I was 23, I was working in telephone-based technical support. I was at the job for just over 7 years, but the average length of employment per employee during most of the time was 6 months. That meant that I met a lot of coworkers, got to work closely with them for a few months, and then moved on. The parade of people that I met there included a wide variety of colorful characters. Not all of the colorful characters that I met during that time in my life were coworkers. There were also their friends, roommates, and family. One guy that I met shared an interest in Highlander, martial arts, and programming. We met a few times after work to discuss the possibility of creating a game based loosely on the concepts behind Highlander, immortal fighters moving through the ages. Nothing ever came of it. Our visions were not compatible. I honestly don't remember much else about him, and couldn't pick him out of a lineup today if my life depended on it. But he had a roommate I'll never forget. The third time we were meeting, his car was in the shop, and I had to take him home to pick something up before we went to the local Subway to talk things over. While he was getting his stuff, I talked with the roommate. He was a very nervous kind of guy, but together and organized. While we waited, he showed me his gun collection. It was in a cupboard by the door. I was impressed. I don't know how many guns there were, but they were organized by size and penetration, easily accessible, unloaded but with the ammunition readily available. It was several rows of guns, and unless I'm deeply mistaken, I think a few of them were even legal. Impressed by his organization, I asked him what he needed all these guns for. What he said next nearly ruined my respect for him. He was preparing for the zombie apocalypse. I like to consider myself open-minded. I'm not quick to dismiss friends that think they've seen a Bigfoot or an angel or a demon. However, I don't see enough evidence that a large-scale paranormal event is imminent that will disrupt regular commerce or law enforcement. But I've been wrong before, and I want to be open to the data, so I asked him what data led him to this conclusion. It turns out that he wasn't crazy. He didn't actually think that there was going to be a zombie apocalypse. Zombies were just a convenient way for him to discuss real-life dangers he might encounter without sounding like he was accusing anyone in particular of being a threat. Over the years, I've actually kept that strategy in mind. I'm not as good at it as he was. He was able to explain how he used this strategy in various other conversations. It's easier to get people to join the thought experiment when it's a movie monster than when it's someone kinda creepy but lovable like Uncle Fester. We all know a guy that's totally fine despite eating slightly spoiled food somewhat regularly. That doesn't imply that we should relax the laws about serving spoiled food. But if we start saying that people who serve spoiled food are a danger, someone is going to be concerned about their friend that eats slightly spoiled food. If we change the monster to be the living soup of children's stories, and say we need to cook food to stop the evil soup and freeze the food to stop the evil soup, no one gets offended at that. Sure, we sound crazy to the people that don't know the code, but it's amazing to me how often these analogies work. The zombie apocalypse really does work as a good stand-in for the kinds of dangers that men face from other people. Zombies don't work as well as a proxy for the dangers women generally face. This could be cultural. I've heard that in Nordic cultures where women are more completely integrated into business culture, women suffer more random, unprovoked violence. I've never looked into the statistics on that, so it might not be true. Here in America, though, most women who suffer violence are safer among strangers than dangerous friends and family. If you don't like that, be safer friends and family for the women in your life. I don't do stats and figures for movie reviews, but if I get enough feedback on this post, I'll look into defending these views in a Saturday post. When I was running a Kung Fu club, I did the research then. The data is out of date, but the Google slides I used back then are still publicly available with sources. The movie monster that I think works as the best proxy for the dangers women face is the vampire. He will try to seduce you, to make you his, and then he'll drain your life. This isn't universal by any stretch. I'm not saying there are no men that have fallen into that kind of relationship and been abused, and I'm not saying that no woman has ever been attacked at random walking down the street or by a good friend that heard something untrue about her. I am saying that to whatever degree we should all follow the statistics about what is dangerous to us personally, men would be better off looking to zombie movies for inspiration for the kinds of dangers to prepare for, and women would be better off looking to vampire movies. This movie maintains that trend. It does bring some much-needed nuance to that by making Renfield, Dracula's primary victim, male. It's subtle in other vampire literature, but Dracula also makes Renfield feel like he has all the power as long as Renfield stays under Dracula's control. This is classic abusive behavior. A controlling abuser will try to make his victim feel like they aren't being controlled or abused. To do this, they will make their victim feel powerful. This is something that the church as a whole should be more cautious about. There are some of us that are vocal about calling out abusive techniques in church and parachurch leadership, but we're willing to overlook abusive behavior if a leader supports our political agenda. Personally, I prefer to go the opposite way. I'll overlook political differences if the organization exercises positive means of protecting the congregation from abuse. I think that when our leadership gets to that point, we will find a radical change in how we are perceived. One thing that I liked about this movie is that it creates a path to escape abusive partners. That's rare in vampire literature. I felt that the placement in a self-help group was a little on the nose, but they fit it into the story very well. Do be warned before you go. The violence and bloodshed is way beyond what's necessary for the story. No matter how old you are, you're not old enough for this kind of violence. But if you can handle that, it's done in such an over-the-top way that it does add to the comedy.